The sound of rain hammering against glass stopped Seojun mid-sentence. His phone vibrated, a number he didn't recognize. He shouldn't have answered. If he'd let it ring, maybe Chairman Lee's men wouldn't be pointing guns at Zaraya's hospital room door right now. Maybe his unborn child wouldn't have a price on its head before taking its first breath. The Busan skyline glittered through floor-to-ceiling windows, each raindrop racing down the glass like it was trying to escape. Han Seojun sat at the head of a mahogany table that cost more than most people's cars. His suit was perfectly tailored, hiding the scar that ran from his shoulder to his elbow, a reminder from his less corporate days. With all due respect, Mr. Han, Elder Park's voice cut through the air-conditioning hum, your position remains vulnerable. The other families are watching. The old man adjusted his glasses. They see a young man with no heir, no family ties. Seojun didn't flinch. 5 other elders nodded in agreement, their faces illuminated by the blue glow of their tablets. Spreadsheets and cargo manifests, the paper trail that made their smuggling operation look legitimate. What Elder Park means, Chairman Lee added, leaning forward, is that the Han shipping legacy needs continuity. Your father understood this. At your age, he already had. I'm aware of what my father had, Seojun replied, his voice quiet but firm. The room went still. Even the air seemed afraid to move. Chairman Lee had been his father's right hand, now supposedly Seojun's mentor. But lately, his guidance felt more like circling. Waiting. The digital clock on the wall read 3 a.m. These meetings always happened when the rest of Busan slept. Legitimate businessmen didn't need to hide in the dark. Seojun's phone vibrated against the table, screen lighting up with an unknown number. Everyone stared. Nobody called Seojun's private line unless it was an emergency. Excuse me, Seojun said, standing up. The elders exchanged glances. Nobody interrupted these meetings. He stepped away from the table and pressed the phone to his ear. Speak. Mr. Han? A woman's voice, rushed and echoing. Hospital sounds in the background. I'm a nurse at Busan Public Hospital. A woman named Zaraya Lane was just admitted to our emergency room. Seojun's fingers tightened around the phone. 2 years. It had been 2 years since he'd heard that name. The morning he woke up and found his apartment empty. Her side of the bed still warm. His spare key left neatly on the kitchen counter. Is she all right? His voice dropped an octave, earning curious glances from the elders. She's in labor, Mr. Han. The nurse lowered her voice. She came in bleeding. I think someone hurt her. Labor. The word hit him like a physical blow. Zaraya was having a baby. Was it his? It had to be. The timing. She begged me to call you, the nurse continued, now whispering. She said to tell you, Chairman Lee's people are here. Seojun's eyes snapped to Chairman Lee, who was watching him with calculated interest. The older man smiled slightly, head tilted in question. Is the baby okay? Seojun asked, turning away from that smile. She's only at 34 weeks. We're doing everything we can, but... The nurse's voice wobbled. Mr. Han, she's terrified. I've never seen anyone this scared in my life. Seojun could picture Zaraya perfectly. Her dark hair falling across her face. The small scar above her eyebrow from when they'd been caught in a rival territory. The way she used to hum when she was nervous. Lock her room door, Seojun ordered. Don't let anyone in except medical staff you personally know. I'm on my way. He hung up and turned back to the table. Chairman Lee was still smiling. Trouble, Seojun? The old man asked, tapping his pen against the table. You look concerned. For a flash, Seojun remembered Zaraya's last night with him. How she'd seemed distant. How she'd touched his face while he was falling asleep, like she was memorizing it. She must have known she was pregnant. And she'd run. Not from him, from Chairman Lee's people. "We'll continue this discussion tomorrow," Seojun said, sliding his phone into his pocket. He didn't offer an explanation. Explanations were for equals. "The succession issue requires immediate attention," Elder Park insisted. "Your position." "My position is secure," Seojun cut him off. "This meeting is adjourned." As he walked toward the door, he caught Chairman Lee's reflection in the glass. The old man was watching him with the focus of a predator who'd just spotted weakness. Seojun stepped into the hallway where his driver waited. "Get the car." While the driver hurried ahead, Seojun reached under his jacket. The weight of his gun was reassuring against his ribs. He checked it quickly, full magazine, one in the chamber. If Chairman Lee's men were at the hospital, they weren't there to deliver flowers. They were there to eliminate a threat to succession, a child that would secure Seojun's position permanently. His child. With Zoraya. The elevator doors opened. Rain pounded against the building's glass exterior like a warning. Somewhere across the city, Zoraya was in labor with his baby, surrounded by people who wanted them both dead. Seojun stepped into the elevator. The weight of what was happening hit him all at once. He was going to be a father. If he made it in time. The doors closed on the reflection of a man whose careful, controlled world had just shattered. If you're on the edge of your seat, don't leave now. Hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. This story is just getting started. The rain turned Busan streets into rivers of neon. Seojun's knuckles went white against the steering wheel as he cut across 3 lanes of traffic. Horns blared behind him. He didn't care. The dashboard clock read 3:17 a.m. 12 minutes to the hospital. Maybe less if he ran every red light between here and there. Faster, he ordered his driver, who was already pushing 90 through an empty intersection. The windshield wipers couldn't keep up with the downpour. Each lightning flash illuminated the cityscape for a heartbeat, then darkness swallowed it again. Zoraya. Pregnant. In danger. The thoughts hammered in time with his pulse. The last piece hit him like a freight train, Chairman Lee knew before he did. His phone buzzed with a text from his security chief. 3 of Lee's cars left the tower 5 minutes after you. Seojun's jaw tightened. They weren't even trying to hide it. The car hydroplaned through a turn, and suddenly he was back at Han Tower 2 years ago. The memory rushed at him, sharp, unwanted. The first time he saw Zoraya, she was arguing with his head of security in the lobby of Han Shipping's legitimate headquarters. 5'7" in flat shoes, dark hair pulled back, wearing a navy pantsuit that had seen better days. "I don't need an appointment," she'd insisted, her accent marking her as American. "I'm here about the Kingston account. Your boss is losing $6 million on that deal because someone misfiled the customs paperwork." Seojun had been crossing the lobby, headed to another tedious board meeting. He stopped. "The Kingston account is classified information." She'd turned, not intimidated in the slightest. "Then someone should classify it better. Your digital security is a joke." He should have had her removed. Instead, he'd taken her up to his office. She was a financial auditor for one of their American partners. She'd spotted a discrepancy that would have exposed one of their smuggling routes. "You could have reported this to the authorities," he'd said after she explained the loophole. "I could have," she agreed. "But then I wouldn't get paid for fixing it." Her smile had surprised him. It transformed her face from merely pretty to something that made his chest tighten. He hired her as a consultant the next day. The SUV swerved around a delivery truck. Seojun braced against the door. 8 minutes to the hospital. He remembered their first real date, not the business dinners where they pretended to discuss work, but the night he took her to a tiny restaurant in Busan's old quarter. The owner knew not to seat anyone near them. Knew not to recognize Seojun at all. She'd worn a simple black dress. Nothing flashy. Her only jewelry was a thin gold chain with a small pendant. My mother's, she'd explained when he asked about it. She died when I was 12. My mother died when I was 14, he'd replied. It was the first personal detail he'd shared with anyone in years. Zaraya had a way of doing that, cracking open doors he kept locked. They'd been careful at first. She knew what he really was, beneath the polished businessman exterior. She never asked him to change. Never flinched when he took calls that left him cold and distant afterward. The night she moved into his penthouse, she'd set only 2 rules. Don't lie to me, she'd said. And never bring your work home. He'd agreed to both. He was a man of his word. But Zaraya had broken hers. She'd left without explanation. The memory of that morning cut deeper than any knife. He'd reached for her in his sleep, finding cold sheets instead. His eyes had opened to empty space where she should have been. At first, he'd thought she was in the bathroom or the kitchen. But the apartment felt wrong. Too quiet. Her toothbrush was gone. Her clothes, not many, she traveled light, missing from the closet. No note. Nothing except his spare key placed precisely in the center of the kitchen counter. Clean. Professional. Like she'd never existed at all. He hadn't sent men looking for her. Hadn't tracked her phone or checked airport manifests. His pride wouldn't allow it. She'd chosen to leave, he wouldn't chase. Instead, he'd poured himself into work. Expanded his territory. Became colder, more efficient. The whispers among his men changed from questioning his judgment to fearing his lack of mercy. Now he knew. She'd run because she was pregnant. Because Chairman Lee had somehow found out before Seojun did. Because she was protecting their child. The hospital loomed ahead, its windows glowing against the night sky. The driver pulled up to the emergency entrance. Wait here, Seojun ordered, checking his gun again. If I'm not back in 20 minutes, call Kim and tell him to execute Protocol 3. The driver's eyes widened slightly in the rearview mirror. Protocol 3 meant war. Seojun stepped into the rain, not bothering with an umbrella. The cold water soaked through his suit immediately. For minutes since the nurse's call. 3 of Lee's cars already in the parking lot. He approached the sliding glass doors of the emergency entrance. They opened automatically, revealing an empty reception desk. No nurses. No patients waiting on plastic chairs. No security guard. The overhead lights buzzed in the silence. A coffee cup sat abandoned at the reception desk, still steaming. Something was very wrong. A hospital directory on the wall showed the maternity ward on the 4th floor. Next to it, a handwritten sign, elevator maintenance in progress. Please use stairs. Seojun's hand moved inside his jacket, fingers brushing against his gun. The stairwell door clicked as it unlocked. He was walking into a trap. But Zaraya was somewhere in this building. With his child. He pushed the door open and stepped into the darkness beyond. The stairwell smelled of antiseptic and something else, gun oil. Seojun kept his footsteps silent as he climbed, staying close to the wall. The system maintenance sign had been hastily written. Too convenient. He paused at the 2nd floor landing, listening. Nothing. The hospital should have been full of sounds, monitors beeping, nurses talking, wheels squeaking on linoleum. Instead, a vacuum of silence pressed against his ears. His phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from his driver, 3 more of Lee's cars just arrived. 6 men went in through the back. Seojun checked the time, 3:22 a.m. 8 minutes since the nurse called. How many people had Chairman Lee sent to deal with one pregnant woman? He continued up the stairs, careful to stay in the camera blind spots, a trick he'd learned during less legitimate business ventures. At the third-floor landing, he heard voices and froze. Check the east wing already. Nothing. She's definitely on 4. Park said she was admitted through the ER but moved upstairs. 2 men stood by the elevator bank, both wearing dark suits despite the hour. Not hospital security. Their jackets didn't quite hide the bulges of shoulder holsters. Seojun backtracked silently and continued up the service stairs instead. His heart hammered against his ribs, not from exertion but from a feeling he rarely experienced, fear. Not for himself, but for Zariah. For his child. The 4th-floor door had a small square window. Seojun peered through it. The maternity ward corridor stretched ahead, dimly lit and empty. A nurse's station sat abandoned, computer screen still glowing. A half-eaten sandwich on a paper plate. A chair pushed back like someone had left in a hurry. Where was everyone? Had Lee's men cleared the entire floor? Seojun eased the door open. The air felt colder up here, raising goosebumps on his wet skin. His suit clung to him, heavy with rain. 3 steps into the hallway, the lights went out. For 2 heartbeats, pure darkness. Then red emergency lights clicked on, bathing everything in a bloody glow. The air conditioning died with a mechanical wheeze. The building's backup generators should have kicked in immediately. They hadn't. This was coordinated. Professional. Seojun flattened himself against the wall as heavy footsteps echoed from around the corner. 3 men, maybe 4, moving room by room. He heard doors opening, closing. Clear. Clear. Moving to Section C. Seojun needed to find Zariah before they did. He checked the room numbers, 401, 402, 403. He was in the wrong wing. From his pocket, he pulled out his phone to text his driver for backup. The screen wouldn't light up. Dead battery. He'd been on a conference call before the board meeting and forgotten to charge it. A rookie mistake. The kind of mistake that got people killed. Seojun took a steadying breath. No backup. No phone. No weapons except his handgun with 15 rounds. Against how many of Lee's men? Too many. He moved down the corridor, keeping his back to the wall. Each doorway was a potential ambush. The red emergency lights threw strange shadows, turning ordinary objects into lurking figures. The squeak of a gurney wheel made him duck into an empty room. Through the crack of the door, he watched 2 men in suits push a hospital bed down the hallway. A doctor walked beside them, head down, hands trembling. "Where is she?" one of the suits demanded. "I don't know," the doctor stammered. "The nurse who called you, she disappeared. Patients are transferred all the time without my knowledge. Find her, or your family finds out what happens when you cross Chairman Lee." Seojun's jaw tightened. Using civilians as leverage was beneath even the worst of Busan syndicate bosses. But Lee had always played by different rules. He waited until they passed, then continued down the corridor. The room numbers increased. 407, 408. He needed to reach the other wing. A scream pierced the silence, quickly muffled. A woman's voice. Not Zariah's, but someone in pain. Seojun moved faster, no longer worried about stealth. He rounded the corner and found himself in another corridor. Rooms 410 through 420. The numbers he needed. Distant voices grew louder. A door slammed somewhere ahead. They were getting closer. Room 412 had its door shut. Unlike the others, no red light spilled from beneath it. Blacked out. Deliberate. Seojun approached cautiously. Through the small window, he could only see darkness. He tried the handle. Locked. He tapped softly on the glass. Zoraya? Movement inside. A flashlight beam briefly illuminated the room, then went dark again. Who's there? A woman's voice, not Zoraya's. Frightened. I'm looking for Zoraya Lane, Seojun whispered through the door. I'm a friend. A pause. Then, she said someone would come. She said his name was Seojun. Relief washed over him. That's me. Let me in. How do I know? Smart woman. Trust no one. Tell her. He hesitated. What would only Zoraya know? Tell her I still have the jade elephant she left on my nightstand. The only thing she hadn't taken when she left. A small carving that had belonged to her mother. The sound of something heavy scraping across the floor. A metal cart being moved away from the door. The lock clicked. The door opened a crack, just enough for Seojun to slip through. Inside, darkness. The window blinds were drawn tight. A nurse stood holding a small flashlight, its beam pointed at the floor. She's over there, the nurse whispered, gesturing toward the far side of the room. As his eyes adjusted, Seojun made out a hospital bed in the corner. A monitor beside it had been unplugged, no telltale lights or beeping to give away their location. And on the bed, curled on her side, clutching her stomach, was Zoraya. Even in the dim light, he could see how pale she was. Her dark hair stuck to her forehead with sweat. Her eyes were squeezed shut in pain. Her hospital gown was spotted with blood. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Time slowed as everything else faded away, the danger, the hunt, the 2 years of silence between them. He took one step toward her. Then another. A loud crash echoed from the hallway. Male voices, closer now. Heavy footsteps. Room 410, clear. Moving to 412. Seojun spun around. The nurse's eyes widened in terror. Help me, she whispered, pushing the heavy medicine cart back toward the door. It wasn't enough. It wouldn't hold them. Zoraya's eyes fluttered open. For the first time in 2 years, their gazes met. Seojun, she whispered, her voice cracking. They found me. The door handle rattled violently. Get away from the door, Seojun ordered, pulling the nurse back by her sleeve. He wedged his shoulder against the medicine cart, bracing it against the handle as the door shuddered from impact. It won't hold, the nurse whispered, hands trembling. It doesn't need to hold forever, Seojun replied. Just long enough. He turned to Zoraya. 2 years since he'd seen her face. 2 years of anger, of questions, of a coldness that had settled into his bones. Now here she was, pale, terrified, and clearly in pain. Her stomach was swollen beneath the thin hospital gown. His child. The knowledge still felt like a blow to the chest. You came, she whispered, her voice cracked and dry. The nurse called. He moved to her side, keeping his voice neutral despite the storm inside him. You're in labor. Zoraya nodded, then gasped as another contraction seized her. She grabbed the bed rail, knuckles going white. 6 minutes apart now. Her breathing came in short, controlled bursts. Not safe here. Lee's men. I know. Seojun glanced at the door as another thud shook it in its frame. The medicine cart slid an inch across the floor. We need to move you. First, Zoraya fumbled with something tucked under her pillow. You need to see this. She pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn at the creases like it had been opened and refolded countless times. Seojun took it, switching on his phone's flashlight. The battery warning flashed red, almost dead. He had maybe 30 seconds of light. It was an email. Printed. Dated exactly 2 years and 3 months ago. Ms. Lane. You have become a liability to Han Seojun's future. Your relationship distracts him from his responsibilities to the organization. More concerning is your current condition. A child would solidify Seojun's position as head of the Han family business. This is unacceptable to those of us who have guided the organization for decades. You have 2 options. 1. Disappear. Take nothing, say nothing. Your family in America will remain untouched. 2. Stay, and I will ensure that neither you nor the child survives to see the new year. I trust you'll make the correct choice. Chairman Lee. The signature was unmistakable. The same elegant script that had signed off on Seojun's promotion papers when he took over after his father's death. The phone screen went black. Battery dead. But Seojun had seen enough. You were pregnant, he said quietly. When you left. 8 weeks, Zoraya confirmed. Her eyes never left his face, searching for his reaction. I was going to tell you that night. Then I found this printed and left on your desk while you were showering. Another crash against the door. The cart slid another inch. I didn't know who to trust, she continued quickly. Your security, your driver, anyone in your organization, they all reported to Lee at some point. So you ran. Not a question. A statement. I ran to protect our baby. Her voice hardened. I knew what would happen if I stayed. Lee would make it look like an accident. A complication. You'd never know. Seojun's mind raced through the implications. Chairman Lee had been his father's right hand for 30 years. Had helped Seojun navigate the transition after his father's death. Had stood beside him at the funeral. Had sworn loyalty. All while plotting to control the Han legacy by eliminating any heirs. He wanted me isolated, Seojun realized aloud. Dependent on the elders. No family ties. No succession line, Zoraya agreed. Another contraction hit, and she bit back a cry. When it passed, she continued through gritted teeth. I stayed hidden. Changed my name. Moved every few months. For 2 years. The weight of that time hung between them. Why come back to Busan? Why risk it? I didn't plan to. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. I was in Japan. My water broke in a restaurant. I panicked. Used my real passport to get emergency transport back to Korea. The nurse, who had been silently monitoring the door, spoke up. She came into the ER an hour ago. Already dilated to 6 centimeters. We moved her up here when the men started asking for her at reception. Another slam against the door. The cart moved further. Metal hinges groaned. They're going to get in, the nurse whispered. Seojun made a decision. He shrugged off his wetsuit jacket and draped it over Zoraya's shoulders. Can you walk? She shook her head. Not far. Not fast enough. There has to be another way out. Seojun turned to the nurse. Service elevator? Staff exit? The service elevator is at the end of the hall, but, the nurse swallowed hard. But they've cut the power. And there are men at both stairwells now. Zoraya suddenly doubled over, a low moan escaping her lips. This contraction seemed worse than the last. When it eased, she looked up at Seojun, real fear in her eyes. 5 minutes apart now, she gasped. It's happening too fast. The urgency of the situation crystallized for Seojun. This wasn't just about escaping Chairman Lee's men. The baby was coming. Soon. All the resentment he'd nursed for 2 years evaporated in an instant. Zoraya hadn't betrayed him. She'd protected their child from a threat he should have seen himself. "Look at me," he said, taking her hand. Her fingers were ice cold. "I'm getting you out of here. Both of you." She searched his face, perhaps looking for any trace of the anger he'd held onto for so long. Finding none, she nodded once. "I never wanted to leave," she whispered. "I never stopped." A massive crash cut her off. The door frame splintered. The medicine cart skidded across the floor, tipping onto its side. Metal instruments clattered across the tiles. The nurse screamed as the door burst open halfway, caught on the chain lock that was miraculously still holding. An arm reached through the gap, feeling for the chain. Seojun drew his gun and aimed it at the door. "Boss, it's me. Park." Seojun recognized the voice, one of his own security team. He lowered the gun slightly. "Prove it. You have a scar on your right shoulder from the Incheon deal 3 years ago. I was there when it happened." "True. But not enough. What did you give me for my birthday last year?" A pause. "Nothing. You told us never to acknowledge your birthday." "Also true." Seojun nodded to the nurse to unchain the door. Park stepped in, his suit as wet as Seojun's. Behind him stood 2 more of Seojun's men. "The building surrounded, boss," Park reported. "Lee's men on every exit. They've evacuated most of the staff to the ground floor. Told them there's a gas leak." "How did you find me?" Seojun asked. "Followed Lee's men." Park's eyes darted to Zaraya, widening slightly at her condition. "We need to move fast. They're searching room by room. There's at least 15 of them." Zaraya cried out again, clutching her stomach. Everyone turned to look at her. "The baby's coming," the nurse said, her professional demeanor returning now that they had reinforcements. 4 minutes apart. "We can't move her far." A distant shout echoed down the hallway. They'd been found. Seojun made a quick calculation. 15 of Lee's men against his 3. Bad odds. And Zaraya couldn't run. He looked around the room, searching for options. His eyes landed on the ceiling tiles. "Is there access to the maintenance crawlspace up there?" he asked the nurse. She nodded. "Yes, but..." "It's our only option," Seojun cut her off. He turned to Park. "Hold them off. Buy us time." Park nodded grimly, understanding the order. He positioned his men at the doorway, guns drawn. Seojun reached up and pushed aside a ceiling panel. A dark space opened above them. "I can't climb up there," Zaraya protested weakly. "I can barely stand." Another contraction hit her, stronger than before. She screamed this time, unable to hold it back. The sound echoed down the hallway. Footsteps pounded toward them. They heard her, Park warned, raising his gun. The first of Lee's men appeared at the end of the hallway. Gunfire erupted, deafening in the enclosed space. One of the bullets struck the door frame, sending splinters flying. The nurse ducked, covering her head. Zaraya gripped Seojun's arm, her nails digging into his skin. "The baby," she gasped. "Seojun, the baby is coming now." The hinges of the door began to give way as more of Lee's men joined the assault. Gunfire peppered the doorway. Seojun pulled Zaraya's bed away from the wall, creating distance between her and the bullets. The nurse dropped to the floor, crawling toward them. "We need another way out," Seojun said, scanning the room. His eyes landed on a square metal grate near the floor, larger than an air vent. "What's that?" The nurse followed his gaze. "Laundry chute. All the floors have them. It goes straight to the basement." "Where does it come out?" Seojun demanded. "Laundry collection room. Near the loading dock." Her voice shook. Above, Zariah stared into the dark maw of the laundry chute. The nurse had one hand on her back, the other holding her arm. Feet first, the nurse instructed. Try to keep your legs straight to slow your descent. Zariah shook her head. I can't. A bullet punched through the door, missing Park by inches. He returned fire, then shouted, "They're breaking through." Now or never, the nurse said firmly, helping Zariah into position. Zariah closed her eyes. The metal felt ice-cold against her skin as she eased into the chute. She looked down one last time, seeing only darkness. I'll catch you, Seojun's voice floated up. I promise. She let go. The descent was faster than she expected. The metal walls of the chute rushed past, scraping against her shoulders. The thin hospital gown provided no protection against the cold surface. Her back ached with each bump and turn. Then, just as panic began to overtake her, strong arms caught her. Seojun absorbed the impact, sinking deep into the pile of linens with Zariah cradled against his chest. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. You're safe. The relief was short-lived. A contraction hit immediately, more powerful than any before. Zariah curled forward, a cry tearing from her throat. They're closer together, she gasped when it passed. 2 minutes now. Seojun helped her out of the bin, supporting most of her weight as her legs trembled beneath her. The basement was dimly lit by emergency lights, casting long shadows across concrete floors. Massive washing machines lined one wall, silent without power. We need to reach the loading dock, Seojun said, guiding her toward a heavy metal door. My driver should be. The crack of gunfire echoed down the laundry chute. Then silence. Park, Seojun murmured, knowing what that silence meant. Zariah clutched his arm. Did they? We need to move, he cut her off, unwilling to confirm what they both suspected. The loading dock connects to the parking garage. My car is there. They made it halfway across the basement when Zariah stopped suddenly, doubling over. Wait, she gasped. Something's wrong. Seojun felt it before he saw it, warm wetness soaking through his shirt where he supported her. He looked down. A puddle was forming at their feet. My water, Zariah whispered, her voice tight with fear. It's completely broken now. The contraction that followed brought her to her knees. This one didn't end quickly. Her face contorted in pain, a low moan building to something more primal. The baby, she panted when she could speak again. Seojun, the baby is coming now. Above them, a door slammed. Heavy footsteps pounded on metal stairs. Lee's men had found the service stairwell to the basement. Footsteps thundered down the service stairwell. Zariah couldn't walk, couldn't even stand straight. Seojun made a split-second decision, scooping her into his arms. Her weight surprised him. So light, even with the baby. Hold on to me, he ordered, moving as quickly as he dared across the basement. She buried her face against his shoulder, muffling another cry as a contraction seized her. Her fingers dug into his shirt, body tensing against his. The basement stretched before them like a concrete maze. Seojun navigated through narrow passages between industrial washers, past metal carts filled with sheets. The emergency lights cast everything in that eerie red glow, turning shadows into threats. There, he nodded toward a heavy metal door marked Loading Bay. Behind them, voices echoed. Check the laundry room. They went down the chute. Zariah's breathing came in short, shallow bursts. I can't hold it much longer, she whispered. The baby. Just a little further, Seojun promised, though he wasn't sure if it was true. He shouldered through the loading bay door, stepping into a cavernous concrete area where delivery trucks would normally dock. The massive rolling door was closed, but a smaller side exit stood nearby. Rain pattered against the metal roof overhead, drumming a frantic rhythm. The door led directly to the hospital's parking structure. Seojun pushed through, and immediately the rain hit them, cold, relentless sheets of water. The garage was dark except for a few security lights, creating pools of yellow in the gloom. "Third level," Seojun said, heading for the ramp. "My driver." A harsh cry escaped Zaraya as another contraction hit. "They're too close," she gasped when it passed. "Less than 2 minutes now." Seojun moved faster, his shoes splashing through puddles. Water streamed down his face, soaking what was left of his once immaculate suit. Zaraya trembled against him, her hospital gown plastered to her skin. The garage ramp seemed endless. Every shadow might be one of Lee's men. Every sound could be a gun being drawn. Then, finally, the sleek black SUV appeared, parked exactly where he'd left it. The driver stood beside it, rain dripping from the umbrella he held. His eyes widened at the sight of Seojun carrying a pregnant woman in a blood-spotted hospital gown. "Hospital's compromised," Seojun said, not wasting time on explanations. "Get us to Dr. Park's clinic. Now." The driver rushed to open the rear door. Seojun carefully placed Zaraya on the leather seat, then climbed in beside her. The door closed with a solid thunk, sealing them in sudden quiet. The rain became a distant drumming on the roof. "Drive," Seojun ordered. "Watch for tails." The engine purred to life. The SUV pulled away from the curb, headlights cutting through the darkness as they descended the garage ramp. For the first time since the nightmare began, they had a moment to breathe. Zaraya sank back against the seat, eyes closed, face contorted with pain. Her wet hair clung to her neck and shoulders. The thin hospital gown left little to the imagination, the curve of her stomach, the outline of her collarbones, the goosebumps on her arms. Seojun shrugged out of his shirt, leaving just his undershirt. He draped the damp but warmer fabric around her shoulders. "Here," he said, voice gentler than he'd intended. "You're freezing." Her eyes opened. For a moment, she looked at him the way she used to, before the running, before the fear. "Thank you," she whispered. The driver turned onto the main road. Through the tinted windows, Busan's lights blurred in the rain. The digital clock on the dashboard read 3:47 a.m. "Dr. Park's clinic is 15 minutes away," Seojun said, trying to sound calm. "He's discreet. Not connected to the hospital system." Zaraya nodded, then tensed as another contraction began. Her hand found his, gripping it with surprising strength. He didn't pull away. When it passed, she exhaled slowly. "I've been living 3 miles from your office," she said, her voice barely audible over the engine. "For the past 4 months." Seojun's head snapped toward her. "What?" "A small apartment in Nampodong. Above the noodle shop with the blue sign." She gave a weak smile at his stunned expression. "Sometimes the safest place to hide is in plain sight." "I dyed my hair. Wore glasses. Changed my name to Kim Min-ji." 3 miles, Seojun repeated, something like wonder in his voice. "So close all this time. Why risk staying in Busan at all?" Zaraya's eyes met his. "I wanted the baby to be born where its father was. I wanted." She hesitated. "I kept hoping I'd find a way to tell you. To make it safe somehow." The revelation hung between them. For 2 years, he'd assumed she'd fled to the other side of the world. That she'd wanted nothing to do with him or his life. Instead, she'd been close enough that they might have passed on the street. The SUV stopped at a red light. Rain streaked down the windows, distorting the world outside. In that suspended moment, Seojun found himself reaching out, brushing wet strands of hair from her face. His fingers lingered at her cheek. "I looked for you," he admitted quietly. Not right away. My pride. But after 6 months, I had men searching. No trace. I learned from the best, she said, a ghost of her old smile appearing. You always said the key to disappearing was changing everything but keeping one thing the same. I kept my coffee habit. Still went to the same chain, just different locations. The light turned green. The car moved forward. You mentioned Dr. Park, Zariah said, shifting to find a more comfortable position. Another contraction was building, he could see it in her face. Is he the same one who patched you up after the Gwangbok incident? Seojun nodded, surprised she remembered that detail from so long ago. He owes me his life. We can trust him. The contraction hit. This time, Zariah couldn't hold back her cry. Her back arched, her hand crushing his. 1 minute apart, she gasped when it passed. We're not going to make it to the clinic. The baby is coming now. Seojun leaned forward. Change of plans. Find us somewhere secluded to pull over. The driver nodded, taking the next turn. The SUV pulled onto a smaller road leading away from the city center. Fewer lights, fewer witnesses. Seojun reached for his phone, intending to call Dr. Park directly. Dead. He spotted a charger plugged into the console. Give me your phone, he told the driver, who passed his back without question. Seojun plugged in his own device, watching impatiently as the screen lit up with the charging symbol. Zariah's breathing became more labored with each passing minute. Her skin glistened with sweat despite the car's air conditioning. Tell me what to do, Seojun said, forcing his voice to remain steady. I've never delivered a baby before. A weak laugh escaped her. That makes 2 of us. The phone buzzed as it gathered enough charge to power on. Notifications began to appear. 3 missed calls from his security team. A message from his lieutenant. And a text from Chairman Lee. Seojun opened it, feeling cold dread spread through his chest as he read. I hope the child has your eyes, Seojun. I look forward to meeting my new grandchild very soon. Did you really think I wouldn't be tracking your car? Seojun stared at the text, a chill spreading through him that had nothing to do with his wet clothes. I hope the child has your eyes, Seojun. I look forward to meeting my new grandchild very soon. Did you really think I wouldn't be tracking your car? Stop the car, he ordered. Now. The driver pulled over immediately, tires crunching on wet gravel. They'd reached an industrial area on the outskirts of the port district. Warehouses loomed like sleeping giants in the darkness. The rain had eased to a steady drizzle. What is it? Zariah asked, her voice tight with pain. Seojun showed her the phone. Her face, already pale, went ashen. He's tracking us, she whispered. The car has a GPS tracker. Seojun turned to the driver. Did you know about this? The driver's eyes widened in the rearview mirror. No, boss. I swear. The car gets serviced at the company garage. Anyone could have. Get out, Seojun ordered. Check the undercarriage. Check everything. While the driver hurried into the rain, Seojun turned back to Zariah. Her breathing had become shallow, her skin clammy to the touch. The contractions were nearly constant now. We need a doctor, he said, brushing damp hair from her forehead. Dr. Park is compromised, she finished. If Lee knows about your car, he knows about your doctor. The driver rapped on the window, then opened the door. Rain spattered inside. Found it, he said, holding up a small black device. Magnetic. Professional grade. Military spec. Seojun took it, crushing the tracker under his heel. Too late. Lee already knew their location. Already had men closing in. We need to switch cars, he decided. And we need a new destination. Zaraya suddenly doubled over, a cry escaping her lips. This contraction was different, her entire body seemed to convulse with it. The baby, she gasped when she could speak again. It's coming. I can feel the head. Seojun felt real fear then. Not the controlled anxiety of a business risk or the calculated concern of a tactical situation. This was primal. Visceral. His child was about to be born in the back seat of a car while assassins hunted them. He reached for the driver's phone again. One person he could still trust. Had to trust. He dialed a number from memory. Min, he said when it connected. It's me. Lieutenant Min had been with him since before his father died. Had saved his life twice. If anyone could be trusted, it was Min. Boss. Relief filled the single word. Where are you? The compound is in chaos. Chairman Lee is mobilizing everyone. Lee is hunting me, Seojun said, watching Zaraya struggle through another contraction. I need an extraction. Secure location. And a doctor, one Lee doesn't know about. A pause. This is about the woman, isn't it? The one who left. She's in labor. My child. The words still felt strange on his tongue. Lee wants them both dead. Another pause, longer this time. Then, Lee's been planning this for months, boss. Moving his people into key positions. Securing loyalty from the younger captains. A coup, Seojun said, the pieces falling into place. Yes. But he needed a trigger. Something to destabilize you. Zaraya's eyes met his, widening with realization. That's why he let me think I'd escaped him, she whispered, the words punctuated by sharp breaths. That's why he didn't push harder when I disappeared. What do you mean? Seojun asked, dread coiling in his stomach. He's been tracking me all along, Zaraya said, her voice breaking. The night my water broke, there was a man following me. I thought I lost him, but... He wanted you to panic, Seojun realized. To seek medical help. To use your real ID. To call you, Zaraya finished. I played right into his hands. The truth hit Seojun like a physical blow. Lee hadn't just discovered Zaraya's pregnancy by accident 2 years ago. He'd been orchestrating events from the beginning, waiting for the perfect moment to use Seojun's child as leverage. Using Zaraya as bait. Using their child as a trap. Min, Seojun said into the phone, his voice hardening. New plan. I need a location where Lee would never look. I have a place, Min replied. Off the books. Warehouse in the old industrial zone. Used to be a munitions storage facility. Secure. Underground level with medical supplies. Send the coordinates. And Min, no one else can know. No one. Understood. 20 minutes. Seojun hung up, then turned to the driver. We need a new vehicle. Unmarked. Untraceable. The driver nodded. There's a chop shop 3 blocks from here. They owe you after the customs incident last year. Go. Fast. Seojun handed him cash from his wallet. And then disappear for a few days. Lee will be looking for you. The driver hesitated, then nodded again, understanding the gravity of the situation. He disappeared into the rain. Alone with Zaraya, Seojun could finally drop his mask of calm control. He moved closer to her, taking her hand. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have seen this coming. Should have protected you better. Zaraya squeezed his hand weakly. We both underestimated him. She tried to smile, but it transformed into a grimace as another contraction seized her. This one lasted longer than the others, pulling a deep, guttural sound from her throat. When it ended, she was panting, tears mixing with sweat on her cheeks. Seojun, she gasped, real panic in her voice now. We can't wait for a new car. We can't wait for your lieutenant. She shifted, trying to pull up the hospital gown. Her movements were frantic, instinctive. The baby is coming now, she said, her voice suddenly calm in a way that terrified him. I need you to help me. Right now. Headlights swept across the car as a vehicle turned onto their street, moving slowly. Searching. The headlights grew brighter, sweeping across their windshield. Seojun ducked low, pulling Zaraya down with him. Don't move, he whispered. The vehicle crawled past, a police car. Not Lee's men, but just as dangerous. If they were stopped, if they were identified, Lee would know within minutes. The patrol car continued down the street, red taillights disappearing around a corner. Seojun exhaled. We can't stay here, he said, climbing into the driver's seat. The keys were in the ignition. I know a place. Hurry, Zaraya gasped, another contraction building. Please. Seojun pulled away from the curb, driving without headlights until they were several blocks from where the tracker had been planted. Rain tapped against the roof, a steady rhythm like a countdown. Zaraya's cries grew more frequent. In the rearview mirror, Seojun could see her clutching the leather seat, her knuckles white. Talk to me, he said, trying to keep her conscious, focused. Stay with me. Did you know, she asked between labored breaths, that I was pregnant? Did you suspect? Seojun navigated through the industrial district, taking side streets, doubling back to check for tails. No, he admitted. But I should have. You were sick that last week. Couldn't keep breakfast down. Morning sickness, she confirmed with a weak laugh that transformed into a groan. I didn't know myself until the day before I left. I took a test while you were in a meeting. Another contraction hit. Her reflection in the mirror showed her biting her lip to keep from screaming, head thrown back against the seat. Almost there, Seojun promised, though each second felt like torture. The warehouse district loomed ahead, a maze of concrete structures and metal fencing. Seojun turned down a narrow access road that didn't appear on most maps. The pavement gave way to gravel, then dirt. The SUV's suspension groaned over potholes. Here, he said, pulling up to what looked like an abandoned storage facility. Chain-link fence surrounded it, topped with rusted barbed wire. The building itself was windowless concrete, covered in graffiti. The perfect hiding place. A shell company owned by another shell company owned by the Han family. Not even the syndicate elders knew about this particular property. Seojun killed the engine and looked back at Zaraya. She'd gone very quiet, eyes closed, breathing shallow. Zaraya. He reached back, touching her face. Her skin burned against his fingers. Stay with me. We're here. Her eyes fluttered open. I'm still here, she whispered. But the baby won't wait much longer. He helped her from the car, supporting most of her weight. The rain had stopped, leaving behind a heavy mist that clung to their skin. Their shoes squelched in mud as Seojun half-carried her to a metal door hidden behind overgrown bushes. The keypad looked rusted, abandoned. Seojun entered a code. The door clicked open. Inside was darkness. Seojun felt for the light switch, finding it by memory. Dim bulbs flickered to life, revealing a large open space. Concrete floors. Metal shelving. Dust everywhere. This way, he said, guiding Zaraya toward a freight elevator at the back. The secure level is below. The elevator groaned to life, descending slowly. Zaraya leaned heavily against him, her breathing labored. When the doors opened again, they stepped into a different world. Clean white floors. Fluorescent lights. Temperature control. A bunker designed for extended stays off the grid. My father's panic room, Seojun explained, leading her to a bed in the corner. From the days when rival families were less diplomatic. He helped Zaraya onto the bed. She collapsed against the pillows, her hospital gown soaked through with sweat. Her eyes found his, wide with fear and determination. "I need to check," she said, voice surprisingly steady. "How far along I am?" Seojun nodded, helping her position herself. His hands shook slightly, the first time they'd done so in years. The elevator hummed behind them. Seojun spun around, gun drawn in one fluid motion. The doors opened to reveal Lieutenant Min, arms raised, a medical bag in one hand. "Just me, boss," he said quickly, eyeing the weapon. "Brought supplies." Seojun lowered the gun. "Anyone follow you?" "No." Took every precaution. Min stepped into the room, then froze at the sight of Zaraya on the bed. "She's further along than you said." "The baby's coming now," Seojun confirmed. "What do we do?" Min set the medical bag on a nearby table, pulling out supplies with practiced efficiency. "My sister is a midwife. I've helped before. Not ideal, but better than nothing." Zaraya cried out, her back arching off the bed. This contraction seemed to consume her entirely. "She needs to push," Min said, pulling on latex gloves. "Soon." The next 30 minutes blurred into a haze of urgent instructions, Zaraya's cries, and Seojun's quiet encouragement. He found himself behind her on the bed, supporting her weight, her hands crushing his as she pushed. "I can see the head," Min announced. "One more big push." Zaraya gathered her remaining strength. Her cry this time was different, primal, powerful. Seojun felt her entire body tense against him. Then, suddenly, a new sound filled the room. A tiny, angry wail. "It's a boy," Min said, his voice softening. "A healthy boy." Time seemed to stop. Seojun looked over Zaraya's shoulder to see Min holding a small, squirming bundle. Reddish skin. Tiny fists. Dark hair plastered to a perfect, miniature head. His son. Min wrapped the baby in a clean towel, then placed him on Zaraya's chest. Her arms came up automatically to cradle him, her exhausted face transforming with a radiance Seojun had never seen before. "Look at him," she whispered, voice cracking with emotion. "He has your eyes." Seojun couldn't speak. Something had shifted inside him, tectonic plates rearranging his entire world. This tiny being, still connected to Zaraya by the umbilical cord, had just become the center of his universe. With trembling fingers, he reached out to touch his son's cheek. The skin was impossibly soft. The baby turned toward his touch, dark eyes blinking. "Han Minjun," Zaraya said softly. "If that's okay." "After my father." Seojun nodded, still unable to find words. Minjun. His son. His heir. The moment of peace shattered as Min's phone buzzed. He stepped away to answer it, speaking in low, urgent tones. Seojun barely noticed, lost in the miracle before him. Zaraya looked up, her eyes meeting his. No words were necessary. Everything that had happened, her disappearance, his anger, these 2 years of separation, all of it fell away. "He's perfect," Seojun finally managed, his voice rough with emotion. Min returned, his face grim. "Boss, we have a problem." The spell broke. Seojun's head snapped up. "What is it?" "That was my contact in security. Lee's men are moving toward this district. Systematically searching warehouses." "How?" Seojun demanded. No one knows about this place. Min's expression darkened further. That's the thing. They're heading straight for us. Not searching randomly. Someone told them, Seojun realized. Someone who knew where we were going. Yes, Min confirmed, looking down at his phone. And there's only 3 people who knew, you, me, and your driver. Zaraya clutched the baby closer to her chest, instinctively protective. The driver, she said. He was too quick to find the tracker. Like he knew where to look. Seojun's mind raced. The driver had been with him for 5 years. Had access to his schedule, his movements. The perfect inside man for Lee. How much time do we have? He asked. Min checked his watch. 20 minutes. Maybe less. We need to move. Now. Seojun stood, tactical planning replacing the momentary wonder. Is the tunnel access still operational? Min nodded. Yes, but, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, his face draining of color. What is it? Seojun demanded. Min turned the phone toward him. A text message from an unknown number. Tell Seojun I'm disappointed. I taught him to never trust anyone. Even those closest to him. Especially those closest to him. He knows we're here, Min said quietly. And he knows you're not alone. The tiny wails of the newborn echoed against concrete walls. Seojun stared at Min's phone, at Chairman Lee's message. 20 minutes, maybe less, before Lee's men found them. Can you walk? He asked Zaraya. She looked down at their son, then back at Seojun. The exhaustion in her eyes was replaced with something fiercer. If it means keeping him safe, I can run. Min was already gathering medical supplies. The tunnel leads to the old shipping yard. I have a boat waiting, just in case. Smart, Seojun said, helping Zaraya to her feet. She swayed slightly, still weak from childbirth, but determination steadied her. The baby, Minjun, squirmed in her arms, his tiny face scrunched in protest at being disturbed. So small. So vulnerable. Seojun had spent his adult life surrounded by danger, but never had he felt more at risk than looking at his son's unprotected form. Take them through the tunnel, Seojun instructed Min, get them to the boat. Don't stop for anything. Zaraya's head snapped up. What do you mean? You're coming with us. Seojun moved to a metal cabinet in the corner, entering a code. The door swung open, revealing an arsenal. He selected a handgun, checked the magazine, and tucked it into his waistband. Lee wants me, he said, his voice deliberately steady. As long as I'm with you, he'll keep hunting. You and Minjun will never be safe. Understanding dawned in Zaraya's eyes. You're creating a diversion. I'm ending this, Seojun corrected. Tonight. Min stepped forward. Boss, with all due respect, that's suicide. Lee will have at least 20 men with him. I don't need to defeat 20 men, Seojun said, selecting a second weapon. I just need to reach one. Zaraya handed the baby to Min, then moved to Seojun, her steps still unsteady. She placed her hands on his face, forcing him to look at her. 2 years ago, I left to protect our child, she said, her voice low and intense. I'm not leaving you now. Not when Minjun needs his father. Seojun covered her hands with his own. I'm not the same man you left, he said quietly. These 2 years. I became someone colder. Someone who could do what needs to be done. And what's that? Kill the man who raised me. The words hung in the air between them. Zaraya didn't flinch. Lee was never going to let you lead, she said. Even before I was pregnant. He was always going to try to control you or remove you. The baby just accelerated his timeline. A noise from above, the subtle creak of the warehouse door opening. They were out of time. Go, Seojun urged, pressing a kiss to Minjun's forehead. The baby's skin was impossibly soft against his lips. I'll find you. Zariah's eyes filled with tears. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her quickly, then stepped back. The tunnel entrance is behind the storage shelves. There's a hidden panel. Min knows the way. Min nodded, cradling the baby with surprising gentleness. We'll be waiting at the rendezvous point for 4 hours. After that, get them somewhere Lee could never find them, Seojun finished. Zariah hesitated, then reached beneath her hospital gown. She pulled out the gold necklace she'd worn since he'd known her, the one that had belonged to her mother. She pressed it into his hand. Come back to us, she whispered. Then she was gone, following Min behind the storage shelves. A panel slid open in the wall, then closed seamlessly behind them. Alone, Seojun moved quickly. He rearranged the bed to look like someone was still lying there. Dimmed the lights. Positioned himself in shadow. Footsteps above. Multiple sets. Heavy boots on metal stairs. Seojun checked his watch. 3 minutes since Min and Zariah entered the tunnel. They would need at least 15 to reach the exit. He had to buy them that time. He sent a text from Min's abandoned phone, "We're moving her." East Tunnel. There was no East Tunnel. But Lee wouldn't know that. The elevator hummed to life. Descending. Seojun melted deeper into shadow. The doors opened. 2 men stepped out, guns drawn. Standard enforcers, dark suits, crew cuts, emotionless faces. They swept the room with practiced efficiency, moving toward the bed where the bundle of blankets suggested a sleeping form. Seojun waited until they were fully committed to the room. 2 silenced shots. The men dropped without a sound. He stepped over their bodies and into the elevator, pressing the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, he glimpsed more men descending the stairs, the main force. The elevator rose slowly. Seojun used the time to center himself. To focus. He wasn't fighting for his syndicate now. Not for territory or profit or pride. For the first time in his life, he was fighting for his family. The doors opened onto the main warehouse floor. Moonlight streamed through high windows, casting long shadows across concrete. The space appeared empty, but Seojun knew better. They were here. Watching. Waiting. He stepped out, deliberately exposing himself. "I know you're here, Chairman," he called, his voice echoing in the cavernous space. No need for games. Lights flickered on, harsh fluorescence buzzing overhead. Chairman Lee stood at the far end of the warehouse, flanked by 6 men. Unlike his enforcers, the chairman wore no suit. Just simple black clothing. Practical. The outfit of a man expecting violence. "Seojun," Lee said, his voice carrying the same gentle authority it had since Seojun was a child. "You've led me on quite a chase tonight. Where's the rest of your army?" Seojun asked, slowly moving forward. Each step carefully measured to draw attention away from the hidden tunnel entrance. Lee smiled. "Close enough. Did you really think I'd fall for your East Tunnel misdirection?" "Worth a try," Seojun shrugged. "Why, Chairman? We built this syndicate together after my father died. I trusted you. And that was your mistake." Lee's smile faded. "Your father understood tradition. Blood succession. He knew his position was temporary, holding the seat until the next Han was ready." Seojun kept moving, calculating angles, distances. "I am a Han. But your child," Lee's eyes hardened, "your son is the true heir. In the old traditions, the bloodline must remain pure. No outside influence. Understanding dawned. You wanted to raise him yourself. As your puppet. I would have given him everything, Lee said, genuine emotion coloring his voice. Power. Education. The legacy your father built. But the mother complicated things. An American. An outsider. So you tried to force her to leave me, Seojun said. And when that didn't work, you planned to kill her and take my son. Lee spread his hands. Business, Seojun. Nothing personal. It became personal, Seojun replied, the moment you threatened my family. He was close enough now. 10 meters separated them. Lee's men shifted nervously, sensing the tension building. Where is the child? Lee asked, his tone conversational. As if they were discussing a business acquisition. Safe, Seojun replied. Far from here. Unlikely, Lee scoffed. The woman just gave birth. She couldn't have gone far. He checked his watch. My men are securing the perimeter as we speak. Every exit. Every possible escape route. Seojun smiled. Not every route. He needed 3 more minutes. Just 3 more minutes for Zaraya and Minjun to reach the boat. Lee's eyes narrowed. You've changed, Seojun. There was a time when you would have negotiated. Found middle ground. Becoming a father changes a man, Seojun replied. Then, deliberately provocative, something you wouldn't understand, since your own son disowned you. The barb hit its mark. Lee's composure cracked. My son was weak. Ungrateful. He chose a mundane life over his birthright. He chose freedom, Seojun corrected. Like I'm choosing now. Lee signaled to his men. They raised their weapons. I raised you like a son, Lee said, genuine regret in his voice. I had such hopes. You raised me to be ruthless, Seojun agreed. To eliminate threats without hesitation. He looked directly into the eyes of the man who had taught him everything about power. That's a lesson I learned well. Movement in his peripheral vision. The elevator descending again, more of Lee's men coming up from the bunker. They would have found the empty bed by now. Realized the tunnel escape. Time was up. Seojun made his choice in a heartbeat. Not the choice of a syndicate boss. Not the choice of the cold, calculating man he'd been for 2 years. The choice of a father. He drew his weapon. The warehouse erupted in gunfire. 4 hours later, a boat cut silently through the dark waters of Busan harbor. Zaraya sat huddled under a blanket, Minjun sleeping peacefully against her chest. Min stood at the helm, guiding them toward international waters. The baby stirred, tiny fists flexing. His eyes, so like his father's, opened briefly before closing again. How much longer? Zaraya asked. Min checked his watch. We're at the 4-hour mark now. If he's not here in 10 minutes. He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. Zaraya looked back toward the distant lights of Busan. Somewhere in that glittering cityscape, Seojun had faced Chairman Lee. Alone. He promised, she whispered to her son. And your father keeps his promises. The boat engines suddenly cut out. Min tensed, reaching for his weapon. What is it? Zaraya asked, clutching Minjun tighter. Min pointed to a small speedboat approaching from the east, running dark, no lights. Get below, he ordered. Now. Zaraya hesitated, then carried Minjun down to the small cabin. She found a life vest, placed it beside the baby, then moved back to the stairs, listening. The speedboat drew alongside. A rope thudded against their hull. Min? A voice called, barely audible over the water. Zoraya's heart stopped. She knew that voice. She burst back onto the deck in time to see a figure climbing aboard. His suit was torn. Blood stained his white shirt. A gash ran along his cheekbone. But he was alive. Seojun, she breathed. He turned, the hardness in his eyes softening at the sight of her. Without a word, he crossed the deck and pulled her into his arms, careful not to crush the baby between them. Lee? Min asked quietly. It's done, Seojun replied, not elaborating. Some things were better left unsaid. The syndicate elders are meeting now. By morning, they'll recognize a new leadership structure. And us? Zoraya asked. Seojun looked down at his son, sleeping peacefully despite the chaos of his first hours of life. He touched the tiny hand, and perfect fingers instinctively curled around his. We disappear, he said simply. For a while. Until it's safe. The Han Empire, Min began. We'll wait, Seojun interrupted. I have more important things now. He looked at Zoraya. If that's what you want. Her answer was to kiss him, a promise sealed under the vast night sky. Min started the boat's engine again. Where to, boss? Seojun looked at his new family, then at the endless horizon ahead. Somewhere they'd never think to look for a syndicate boss, he said. Somewhere normal. As the boat moved further from Busan's shores, Seojun watched the city lights recede. The empire he'd fought so hard to build grew smaller with each passing moment. Yet somehow, he felt not loss, but freedom. One phone call at 3 a.m. had changed everything. Had brought him Zoraya. Had given him Minjun. Had shown him what truly mattered. The past was behind them now. All that remained was the open sea. And beyond that, a future none of them could have imagined. And that's how Han Seojun's life changed forever with one 3 a.m. phone call. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat and you want to hear more like it, now's the time to make sure you're subscribed. These stories take hours to create, and your support means everything. Smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I've got another shocking story coming next week that you definitely don't want to miss.